Hi everyone. I hope your week has gone well. I'm really excited to be chatting tonight to Rajesh. Rajesh is this amazing young man who has developed this incredible company called Resolute Education. And their whole focus is on how do we get the kids involved in robotics and coding and get the children developing and thinking. And so I'm really looking forward to the chat this evening as we discuss the thinking around it and the project that they're working on and how it can truly benefit schools. So I'm really excited to be sharing with you this evening. So hi, Rajesh.
Hi, Karen. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Don't you want to tell everybody where your idea for Resolute came from?
Yeah, well, I actually didn't know what I wanted to do in school, and I wanted to just become a doctor, I guess, because I wanted to help people in some way. But the marks were the furthest thing away, so I did what any good Indian boy would do: is sign up for electronic engineering. That's what my dad signed me up for, and so I did it. And I didn't really see, I wasn't really passionate about it. But in university, a few of tutor centers asked me to help out with some tutoring. And so that's how I actually got introduced into the education game. I tutored a whole bunch of high school students maths. I did really well in maths in high school. And then I realized, I have this big fun passion for teaching. And so I first called my teaching company RF Tutors, after Roger Federer, because I was a big fan of him. And then it just evolved. And then I think when I was then I was like, we need to have more of a legit name, but it has to start with R. So we just came up with Resolute, and I love what it stands for and what it means. And so, yeah, a friend of mine from high school designed the logo for me. And since then, it was first initially for maths. It was like Resolute Maths, and then it's evolved to Resolute Robotics, which is the main company and the biggest thing we focus on. I think it came, the whole company, specifically Resolute Robotics, formed. I was teaching in my honors year at a public school at Pro Arte. I was teaching grade 8 and 9 maths and science, and I was doing my regular after-school maths classes, and I just realized, this maths is absolutely critical, and there'll always be a need for it, but it's just so, these kids are not getting exposed to any coding or any robotic skills, and I know how much I struggled with it when I got to university. It was like a complete new world to me. I was like, why didn't we do any of this in school? So I approached my lovely co-founder, Gareth Thompson. He is almost the polar opposite to me. So we work very well together. He is engineer at heart, and he did a lot of coding in school, did a lot of 3D printing. And so I approached him because he did really well at university as well. And I told him, listen, this is what I have in mind. And could we maybe take one of our university modules and maybe make it really easier for kids and do it as a club format, where instead of maths, we teach them a little bit of robotics and coding. And back then, weird enough, in 2017, there was a buzz, but it only caught fire like in the past few years. So that's how it started. And since then, we started as clubs, and we made sure everything was video based, because we understood the concepts are so difficult to grasp that kids might need to, it's difficult to just traditionally teach in front of 20-25 students about coding and loops and breadboard theory and resistors and just students grasping it. So we created videos from the onset, and after running it at a few clubs, we received really good reviews, and we were working at Optimi as project managers, and we took a full-time leap of faith to focus on it, and it's been going incredibly well.
That is so exciting. So what age groups do you really focus on?
So we first started, I couldn't really gauge what students would find difficult. So when we first started, we actually targeted very much at a high school level. So grade 8 to 12, or more specifically grade 10 to 12. So the heart was determine what you want to do as a career guidance thing. Is electronic engineering something you need to choose, or is engineering something you need to choose? Because my final year project wasn't something so electronic-y, it was more in data sciences, and I absolutely loved it. So if I knew that at a much younger age, I would have rather done industrial engineering, which still has an engineering and the mathematical concepts with focus on data. So that's how it started in grade 10 to 12. And then we realized just the appetite for it just went all the way down. So in the past year, we've developed curriculum and content all the way from grade 1 up to, I could say, grade 12.
Oh, wow. And then in terms of products that you've developed, what are some of the products that you offer schools?
Yeah, can I share my screen? Let me just quickly go through. Let's do this.
Tell me when you're ready.
Yeah, we're ready. Cool, wonderful. Yeah, so you'd see we call it learning stream options. It just makes it easier for schools to package it. So we have our novice, apprentice, adept, beginner, advanced, and master. And obviously that relates to the different grades and the phases. And just on a very high level, the products that we offer for grade R to 3, it's very much focused on the computational thinking. So algorithms, decomposition techniques, patterns, abstractions, absolutely critical concepts for kids. I mean, we call it robotics and codings for kids, but essentially it's building the critical thinking skills. And that comes with a bot and a really nice book as well that teaches kids how to think critically.
So why do you think we should be focusing on computational thinking for the littlies?
Yeah, I mean, for the little ones, it's, I mean, the way you solve a problem, I mean, to problem solve through different issues that rise. And it isn't just an engineering problem. It could be in project management. It could be in any fields. But for them to critically think through something, to break down difficult tasks. I mean, when they're provided at a corporate level or a university level, a massive task, how to break it down into granular basis, how to think it, how to approach it, how to tackle it. Those kind of skills come from computational thinking principles. So it's absolutely critical.
I agree with you completely. And I think the cool thing that we see in the new coding and robotics curriculum is that the two methodologies that they are saying are the driving strands right the way through are looking at computational thinking and the engineering design process, both of which are really, really important, as you say, in developing thinking and getting children to think critically. So seeing that you're including that in your foundation phase, curriculum 1 ties into that curriculum, but also it's really what children need in our unknown future world.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more.
Sorry, I interrupted you. So the next group?
Yeah, so then, you know, once they have these fundamental principles, I mean, we expose them to a bit of block-based coding. They learn how to navigate through mazes and to just understand how this whole world of tech works and how to think through problems, collaboration with peers, communication at their young age. All of these are absolutely critical soft skills that they learn. But then they come to grade 4 and 5 and we introduce them to Scratch, so block-based coding, and we've decided to the first introduction to a microprocessor. A microprocessor is essentially like your brain, right? It makes all the decision. It takes inputs, processes it, and it has certain outputs that it actions. So we teach the kids those fundamental principles with the microbit board. The microbit board is actually the only kind of, the microbit board in the car is a product that we've actually outsourced because it's so popular. It's created by BBC. It's open source, which means there's so much space for growth in that field. So we teach the students that. We've created our own curriculum with video-based learning on that. And we end the year off, schools have an opportunity to pick. I mean, I've put HTML and CSS here, but they can also pick app development or Python coding or block-based coding, and they can expand on it. So it's like, when we say robotics and coding, we really mean it. You know, we want to do half the year of computer sciences, which is coding, and half the year of robotics, so that they get exposed to both.
That's great. And for me, I think the important thing in terms of introducing them to the robotics is where you're showing them not just the sort of electronic part, but the building. So understanding the mechanism, understanding sort of how to build a little body of the robot, all those things come together in terms of creating the robot. That the one aspect is the coding of it, but it's understanding the whole principle for me is really important.
Yeah, and you'll see the evolution. I mean, if I could just jump to this slide, this is just like in the robotic space. There's just so much products out there, right? From the foundation phase to the FET phase. There's MBots, QBots, Spheros, Lego, EV3 kits, microbits, and so many things out there. And so it becomes a very difficult process, but also it's important. I mean, it's important to realize that when you're young, you don't want something too techy. You just want something that's nice and enclosed that you can just drop and it's safe and you can give it instructions and it can perform certain actions. But then as you grow up the years, it becomes a bit more complex. Now you're actually putting a bot together, but it still looks like a nice, decent little bot. And then you're not going to use that. I think the evolution should be when you get to the senior and FET phase, you're working with components, you're working with your own ingredients, and you want to create your own projects and build what you want, innovate a bit. So that's the nice process that we want to bring is, taking a toy-based option and trying to kind of get it to a more creative option when they get older.
Yeah, I think that's really important in terms of, one, encouraging the creativity even from the children who are little, but two, inspiring them to be creative with knowledge that they've acquired. So implementing what they've made, I think, is really important.
Yeah, and there's a big, I'm sure everyone's heard of this kind of what could I say, philosophy or the story of, when we're young, we start with 50, 60 different color pencils and we can create whatever we want. And then everyone in grade 12 writes their final exam with a blue pen. So we kind of like, not blaming the schooling system, but it's like creativity just gets killed, where everyone's doing the same thing to get their degree. And it's quite nice in our robotics and coding phase where they start off all with a similar bot, but it just becomes more and more creative where they could get into a world where they could create anything. So I find that very fascinating.
Yeah, and I suppose with having taught design and technology for so many years, I just love the design process in getting children to really think. So giving them the base knowledge and then saying, okay, now take this and apply it to solve a problem, where they can all be making their own versions of a similar type solution and discussing it and seeing what works and what doesn't work, for me is really, really important. Getting the children to think and to solve problems.
No, that's it. Yeah, spot on. And so to move on, then from that aspect, and that's what happens in Adept, is in grade 6 and 7, we feel they have enough experience, they have enough skills. So we introduce them to Arduino, which is a bit more of a powerful DIY kit kind of thing. So they can then create multiple projects themselves. So we take them through simulations first, where they learn about how to simulate something before they actually go on to build it. It's such a critical thing almost in any industry. You don't just go build a building or build a car. There's prototyping phase.
Yes.
So each kid's a lot of that, and then they get to tinker around. And the software we use is, funny enough, called Tinkercad. So they can actually build and prototype circuits and see how everything works in principle before they actually get down to building it. And then the Arduino programming, I think there's a big difference that people need to realize. There's something, and they teach that in engineering. There's computer sciences, which is what we call coding, and that's all your different languages like JavaScript, HTML, CSS, front end, back end. There's all this lingo going on, and that's the computer science world of coding. Whereas when it comes to robotics, we call it firmware coding. It's actually coding to the purpose of getting the robot to do something. So we also focus on that firmware coding aspect, is how can you program that Arduino to do something? And that comes alive in our smart garden, which is, I know you love the project, which is extremely exciting because kids get to build, it has a little bit of environmental play. They get to build a sustainable garden. And there's a moisture sensor in the garden, and if it detects that the soil is dry, it automatically turns on the pump and waters the plant. And so you could bring in concepts from natural science about plants and how plants work and how they grow in different conditions. And you could also bring in technology where the CAD subjects, where you could actually 3D print your whole structure, and each kid can have their own way that their smart garden looks. And so a lot of things that comes from that. And then there's the scope of growth. There's a lot. So some students have gone on to, you can build an application that comes with that, so that you can actually monitor, you can collect the data from the soil and monitor it on your phone to see if the soil is dry or wet, and you can actually water the plants from Cape Town. If your plant is connected to the Wi-Fi and so is your phone, you can control all of that. So it just then goes into the realm of data sciences. It goes from just general robotics and building a project to having a little bit of an environmental play, and now you're doing 3D printing, and now you're actually getting into data. So those are the kind of projects which we try to look at where there's space to grow.
And I think that's really important. Your kit is just small, but the knowledge that they learn there, they could then build another Arduino solution using similar technologies, which can go into a real garden, and they could use the same type of app to monitor a real garden that's been grown. And you can plugging directly into the UN Sustainable Goal of no hunger or no poverty, those types of things, which for me then really begins to make learning real and really relevant in terms of what children are doing within their schooling.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we went ahead with the project, to be honest. I watched that movie on Netflix, The Boy Who Harnessed Wind.
Yes.
If you haven't seen it, it's incredible.
Yes.
I mean, he goes and builds a windmill, which powers like a water irrigation system. And that just comes with basic understanding of sciences and technology and electronic components and things like that. So if we could give each child the power to innovate and come up with solutions like that, they could make a big difference in their community.
So I see there's a question from Hassan, and he is saying, what would the minimum requirements a school must have in place in terms of hardware? What is your thinking in terms of that?
Yeah, so it depends, Hassan, which grade and which phases you're looking at. I mean, if you look at the CAPS document, they actually recommend these basic components because it gives you, I mean, having a microcontroller, switches, batteries, breadboards, resistors, light bulbs, and servos, and a couple of sensor modules like temperature, humidity, light, and motion and proximity sensors. These kind of things are having a kit of this is really nice because at the end of the day, the microcontroller is the brain. The sensors are your inputs, which picks it up, and then you have your outputs, which are like pumps and LEDs and things like that. So you could do a lot of things. I mean, the best way I compare this to is ingredients. I mean, I think the 5 most popular ingredients are, I don't know, I think it's oil, salt, chicken, flour, and something else, and eggs. And with those 5 things, you can make like 100 dishes. And that's the same with this. I mean, if you have a collection of this, you could prototype and create different kinds of projects. Obviously, if you're in the younger grades, I would recommend highly picking a bot that you think would last the test of time, is safe. There are a lot of these bots that we've chosen. You can do block-based coding, but it has the capability to do text-based coding as well. So you could program it using blocks, and when the kids are older, they can also program it using Python or JavaScript and things like that. So yeah.
So Hassan, also just to agree with what Rajesh is saying, I think in terms of minimum requirements, one, if you're a government school and you're following the curriculum, there's a really good guide over there. But then hop into places like Instructables and things like that and go and see the kinds of projects you can make as well around that. And you can do a lot with just a microbit. And for example, a couple of weeks ago, I chatted to a lady by the name of Jasmine Florentine, if you want to look at that website, and her whole robots are made out of paper, and she uses microbits. So you can do things from a solutions point of view, or you can, as the teacher, be as creative as you like. So really go in and get to be comfortable yourself with what you're wanting to do. The cool thing that Resolute has done is, as Rajesh was saying, is they've got this online portal where you can go in and watch the videos. They've got solutions here, and you can take this as a start, and you can always add to it if that's what you're wanting to do. So there's a range of different ways that you can explore it, depending on your school's budget, all those kinds of things. Sorry, Rajesh.
Yeah, and no, I think you're spot on there, and I also think there's so many free solutions out there where code.org and YouTube has so many things on Arduinos, and Microbit is an open platform where you can go get a lot of lessons. Whereas if you look at teachers, I mean, I was a teacher, right? And I had this, I didn't know why the maths marks were so low. And so when I thought I'm going to be a teacher, I'm going to be like, my group of kids are going to be phenomenal. Like they're going to get 80s and 90s. And lo and behold, like after the first June examination, the grade average was like 39% at the school. And my class's average was like 47. And it was a bit better, but I felt so despondent. I was like, I tried everything. And so one thing I realized being in the school infrastructure is teachers are extremely busy teaching all the subjects, all the activities that they have to do, the marking, the invigilation, which almost killed me, as well as yeah, all the things, the sports after schools and all the things that teachers are involved with, that all of a sudden expecting a teacher to master robotics and coding overnight is very difficult. And so what our biggest thing that we tell schools is, we're not here to drop boxes off or anything, but we want to form a layer of support where we provide our content, and in year 1 and 2, the teacher can take the time to get a bit comfortable with the product. And obviously in that space, get the kids excited about what they're doing. So while the kids are watching the videos and building it, the teachers also learning. We've implemented in schools with science teachers who have no clue what's happening, but they're also building with the kids, and the kids are helping the teachers and they're learning, and the teachers creating a safe environment where kids are actually working in this space and not feeling the pressure of, I need to make PowerPoints, I need to make assessments. Yeah. We take care of like all of those things. And then in year 2 and 3, when the teacher gets more comfortable, then they can actually get into it. And I think that's the biggest service. When you ask a lot of our teachers what you like about Resolute, it's just that it stresses, it takes the stress away from them and makes them comfortable.
So do you want to talk a bit about the teacher workshops and things you do to help teachers along this journey?
Yeah, spot on. So I think we have a teacher training program. I think we do a teacher training program for all the streams that we actually offer. So it ranges between a 6 to 24-hour program. We teach about classroom management skills. We go through the fundamentals of all the courses, the lab setups. I mean, there's so much lingo. Doing engineering, I'm familiar with the lingo, but like just throwing words there like GoLab, Steam, IDE, Arduino, microbits, loops, and cloud computing, machine learning, artificial neural networks, and cloud computing neural networks. I mean, we joke about it. It's like a bunch of lingo that you throw together and just get them comfortable. Yeah, it's like this cloud computing, like everything, like it's something, and so we use all these classy and clever words that we think are clever, but at the end of the day, it's like all just buzzwords. And for teachers, we just want to get them comfortable of what's happening, how can we help you get started. So we do that. We help with lab setups. We've helped some schools design 3D like not 3D spaces, but like STEAM spaces, so they know what to start off with. And different schools have different problems. Sorry, just to touch on that, some schools have a lot of budget and they don't know what to do with it. They're like, do I buy drones? Do I buy laser cutters? Do I buy 3D printers? Some schools have very little budget and you just want them to, maybe go to code.org and get started small. So we assist with all of that. We would call ourselves a consultants first before we even try push our program. But anyway, so the teacher journey takes them through all of this and gets them comfortable. And the teachers actually build some of the projects with us during that time. And so we split it in 2 trainings, like a hardware training and then a software training. And we also provide all the support and assessments that come with it. So when you sign up with us, you get continuous technical support, project consultation, school visits. We actually give you the full curriculum, lesson plans, assessments, and exams. And so it's been exciting for us to see how different schools' mindset is. Some schools would be like, this is my budget. I want to do it for grade 6. I want to do it for term 3. Some schools are like, I want to do it full in curriculum for grade 8. And this is what we have. So we kind of tailor our solution for the schools.
That's very cool. So Hassan has got another question. He's saying, speaking of budget, what suggested budget would start with grade R and the grade R to grade 3 for the first time? So they're a public school and they have 880 children. So I suppose my comment to you, Hassan, is do a school audit would be my first suggestion. Go in and see what have you got. Go and see what technology you've got, what resources you've got, what are you wanting to do? And then look at your own school's vision. Where do you want to take your school? What's the journey of tech you want to take them on? And once you've decided that, then look at what kind of budget. So what is the solution that you're wanting? If you're looking at a pre-made one like Resolute's one, then contact them and Rajesh is going to speak about budget. If you're doing your own thing, then do the same. But for me, always do your homework. Know what you've got. Know where you're wanting to go and then start planning it. It's not a quick fix kind of thing, because if you're wanting to use something that's going to need Wi-Fi and stuff like that, then it's an infrastructure cost and you need to then look at CapEx. And so think about your planning really effectively in terms of the solution you're wanting. But Rajesh, in terms of your solution for your little babies, what is the costs?
I think before I get into the cost, I agree with you in that, Karen. I think with some of the schools as well, I mean, you'll see some schools have microbits. So when we actually implement, say, our apprentice program, we tell the schools, but then don't buy the microbit, just buy the card that gets paired with that. Some schools will have some sort of Arduino kits that, you know, someone sold it to them a lot earlier. So we've worked with a few schools where we've gone in and literally done stock count and said, okay, well, why don't we just, you know, adapt this or augment your kits so that you can do a program that works like this? Some schools will just have 20 Raspberry Pis lying around, and they're like, I don't know what to do with this. So spot on with the auditing. It's absolutely critical. With the babies, it's a bit of an easier things because you're not having components lying around. So Hassan, we obviously provide the bot as well as the curriculum. And for the primary school, we've kept it very easy. The bots are actually 2,000 Rand. And you don't need a bot per kid. So I would suggest worst case scenario is to have a bot per teacher in the classroom because the teacher's facilitating, they're still very young, and then the teacher can do much of the demonstrations. And then it's just the curriculum purchase. So it's the curriculum, we have 40 lessons in grade 1, 2, and 3. And if you buy all 3 of them, we give it at a little bit of a discount at 24,000. And with this, you also get something called the bot book. So these are all computational thinking books. So critical thinking, 40 lessons that are an hour and a half long. So very CAPS aligned because CAPS has 40 weeks. And then we have a bot book. And the bot book has also 40 lessons that you can then mix it up, because sometimes, a lot of the times, and we've heard this feedback from Lego and Spheros and from international companies, is when you get a toy, you get excited, so you play around with it, and then within 3 to 6 months, kids are bored. They're like, I don't know what to do. I've gotten it to do X, Y, and Z. So that's why we've paired it with computational thinking. So 1 week do computational thinking, the next week work with a few bot lessons, then do computational thinking. But essentially, this is the cost for our grade 1 to 3 for the babies.
So if we also then think of this in terms of classroom management, Hassan, you could look at how do you want to use this in your classroom. So are you going to look at sort of group work type activities where one group could be using the robot and the rest of the groups could be doing other things, either with the teacher or other types of activities, maybe maths or language or something else? So looking at it from that point of view, or actually saying that maybe we want a set of bots which children can all in a group, that the children could then be divided in groups and every group has their own little bot. And those little bots are then moved from class to class to class, and the lessons are not timed at the same time. So you can really think about how you want to do it. And that goes back to your planning. What is your vision? How does your school want to tie into it? So planning is really important in terms of how you want to implement things. Don't just buy for the sake of buying. Have the discussion, do the homework. In the long term, it makes just so much more sense.
Or Karen, just also schools who are listening in, or please consult with us. I mean, there's no cost. We'd love to come and not just push Resolute. I think we'd love to just show you Scratch or the open source platform of Microbit. And I'm sure you've done a lot of open source chats. So we'd love to get you started on the journey. And once your interest grows and you want to do more things, and maybe then Resolute is an option for you later down the line. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great, Rajesh. That's really great. So we focused on the littlies and sort of the primary school. Do you want to now go and show some of the projects and things that you've got for the older kids?
Yes. So like I said, it gets more and more creative, which is quite cool. So one thing I want to say is, like, I think from after grade 5, I think everything is very grade agnostic, because the kids all, I would say, it's not like you need to have any more skills. We've seen some grade 7 kids doing incredible stuff that we call grade 10 projects, because they just have an appetite for it. And we have some kids that are in grade 12 that have had no exposure, who would struggle with the grade 6 and 7 project. But what we've done is we've grouped it together in such a way that it's a bit more structured for schools. So when we do get to the beginner course, they learn the fundamentals. So every year there's a refresher course on the fundamental of electrical circuits, simulations, and Arduino programming. And that's a whole term. And that's, I remember, I think it was engineering second semester, there's a little holiday module, and that's the first time I ever saw a breadboard in my life. And I was like, wow, what is this? And I've never
This thing
seen
with
this
all these
electronic kit
holes.
before. Yeah, with all these holes. And I'm like, what does this even do? What are these components for? And it's so crazy. You get different pools of people. Like my co-founder, Gareth, would be like bouncing up and down because he's like, oh my gosh, we got these kits. And there'll be a group of kids who love it because they had exposure. And there's just me and like almost 70% of the other people that are like, we have no clue what to do with this and what this is about. So we do the intro, we get them to just build a simple circuit. I mean, I wrote science papers in matric where I calculated internal resistances and voltages and LEDs, and I did it really well, but zero practical experience,
Yeah.
So this gives them exposure of that. And then we give them a real life project like the automated hand sanitizer. That looks like something like this. So you'll see they get exposed to a pump and infrared sensors and batteries and relays, and then we actually teach them how if it detects your hand, it releases a little bit of soap.
Cool.
And funny enough, before COVID, we actually called this the automated soap dispenser. And if COVID did us any favors, it just made that project more popular, and we just changed it to hand sanitizer because I think sanitizer was the buzzword for 2020.
Cool.
And then home automation I thought was very cool. You're in the space of IoT where sensors give you data and you have to make decisions from it. So this little home automation is quite cool because a lot of the other projects are one input and one output. So infrared sensors, the input, and the one output is the actual releasing of soap, so the motor. Whereas in this little home automation, there's like 4 things happening. So there's an infrared sensor which detects if there's a car. Then it activates a servo motor where like the garage automatically opens and the car drives in. So then you get out of the car, you go into your bedroom. There's different kinds of RGB lighting, so they can program it how they want. Then you go into the living room and you want to sit and watch a little bit of Netflix, but it's too hot. But don't worry, there's a temperature sensor. So if it gets too hot, the fan automatically turns on for you and you can set it how you want. And then you have a door and say an intruder walks in. We have a buzzer in the control room here, and then automatically the whole place alarm starts going off. So you're working with buzzers, you're working with a capacitive touch sensor which breaks when someone opens the door. You're working with fans and temperature sensors. You're working with LEDs, and you're working with infrared sensors. So now it's like this aspect of building this whole thing together, but also the creative side of actually putting the cardboard together and creating this whole project. This could take 2 terms to do if a school would want to do it properly. So that's something that we do. And then the software side, we get introduced into Python. It is the world's most popular language in the world. I used it for even my final year project as well as my honors project. So we teach them basic games like tic-tac-toe and hangman. We get them into it just to move on a bit faster. Than in advanced, they still do the fundamentals, but the 2 new projects they do is like the line following car. And this is like, it has your 3 sensors. It picks up different values from the ground, and then it determines, it can pick up black from white. And so it can follow a line. You can auto-calibrate it as well. So we have those buttons in there, and then we teach them access control. RFID tags and security systems are also like a big thing. So, when you go to a jewelry shop or a bank, you go into the booth, it picks up if someone's inside, then the door behind you closes, and then only when it closes can you open the next door in front of you. So we teach them different states and how the different states works in an electronic system, and we teach them how to program an RFID tag. And all of this is 3D printed. They can either get it 3D printed or laser cut, and which is really cool when they're building the project. And then now you see that there is a more difficult Python project where they build Space Invaders and Snake and more complex games. And then just to end off with, for grade 10s and above, we introduce them to Raspberry Pi. It's essentially a mini computer. It's amazing. And these are for the kids that are like, I absolutely love this and I want to go into this in the future. And there we expose them to facial recognition because it's powerful enough. So they actually do projects where they can actually detect someone's faces if someone's moving around in the camera. It can detect between a cat and a dog or different kind of fruits because you're training it. And you can also build more complicated games like Mario, 2-player games and things like that. So a lot of schools don't do this. It's usually more for a club option from grade 10 to 12 because it's very high level and for kids who have had a massive appetite for it.
But that's really cool because the options within IT at school are still Delphi. So where you can expose those same children to these types of technologies and get them involved is also really great. And for me, the sad thing is how few children are going into computer sciences and engineering. So if you can be sparking this interest into children that even if they don't necessarily go into those areas, you've created an awareness. And I think that's what we need to be offering our high school kids, is saying, hey, this is really great for all of you.
Yeah, and it's so true. And I just want coding has such a distaste to us, like say with mathematics. It's like people think you either have it or you don't, but it's not true. I did coding in I did IT and I did Java, and I dropped out of IT at the end of grade 10. I'm like, I absolutely hate it because we were just doing theory, or we would do a bunch of programs, and it didn't excite me. And funny enough, coding didn't grasp me throughout university as well until my final year project, where there was a practical aspect. I needed to get signal strength from Wi-Fi because I was doing indoor positioning. And based on the signal strength, I needed to locate where someone was. And so after I collected all the information and I could say, okay, this person is in coordinate 1, 2, so he's in that side of the room. And I actually saw that it was true because the values came, it went through my algorithm, and it outputted where the location of the person was. My mind just blew, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, when you see some practical application of that, then it gets you excited. And then I was sitting in the labs late night for weeks and weeks just programming, and I was enjoying it. And I'm the most anti-programming. I never gamed in my life. I never programmed, and I fell in love with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I never did science to matric because I didn't like the teacher. And and then I trained as a foundation phase teacher and was offered the opportunity to do a course in technology. And the course that we did then was run by a Jewish NGO called ORT. It was ORT STEP. And we did things like programmed lathes. And so you'd do this programming and you'd get this results. And like, I programmed a lathe I actually programmed my husband's name, and they must have had lots of budget because we were cutting in brass. So I've still got that. And we programmed things like robotic cells. And so you could do, like you were explaining, with controlling the temperature and the light and adding the moisture. And as you say, when you're doing these kinds of things, it was just so exciting. And we programmed traffic control systems where we had booms going up and down and controlling lights in terms of traffic lights and all sorts of things like that. I mean, it was technology I've never used in schools. I mean, and this was in the mid-90s, so many moons ago. And yet it was so exciting. And so what for me is exciting is we're now seeing this stuff in schools and we're getting kids to be doing it. And it's really getting kids excited about engineering and coding and robotics and all these great things. Yeah. So I just think it's how do we get kids excited about this kind of stuff?
Spot on. And I want to say, I mean, it's not all about engineering and IT. I mean, for me, this has opened the avenue for business. I mean, I think if you don't understand technology, the chances of you creating a scalable global business is almost naught. I mean, you need to know how systems work. You need to know how electronic coding works and how now we're going into crypto and all of these things. But if you don't have an understanding of that, so some of the kids don't have to be engineers, but like, be part of that group, build something, get an understanding so that, you know, one day when you're working as a business analyst or whatever, it's much easier for you to create a business and that you are sufficient enough. You don't need to rely on someone else to get you into business. I mean, we live in a world now where someone can literally open a warehouse in South America, order shirts from China, transport it straight to the warehouse in South America with a print, and then set up an e-commerce platforms from South Africa and just sell globally. And all you need is a laptop and internet, and that's just a small example. But even in drama, I mean, there's a new algorithm that's out for those Friends fans, me being one of them. I mean, they uploaded all 10 seasons of the script of Friends, and it picked up how different characters would speak. And then the machine algorithm actually released a new episode just based on how the characters would speak completely. I mean, it's going to take a while for us to fully rely on writers that are computer writers, but that's from a drama sense. And music has gone completely electronic. Art is being electronic, where you can actually design online. So it's everywhere, you know?
It is everywhere. And so that's why we just have to teach our children an awareness of it and how to use it. I mean, as you say, to just cope in the world of the future. when they go into business and want to start businesses. And the other thing is, you don't have to have finished school to start a business. There are so many young people who are understanding the technology and starting their own businesses, which is really great in terms of getting people to understand and think around that as well.
Spot on. And schools would hate me to say it, but like in the IT field, specifically in IT, I think if you want to become very specialist engineer, you need to go study your tertiary institution and do well in school. But IT is one of the very few things that if you have a good logical thinking, you could skip grade 11, 12 in university and just become a developer. I have a few developer friends who have a grade 9, and they kind of did their own thing in life, waited, traveled or whatever. And 25 years old, they're like, you know what, I'm going to get into coding. They did a bunch of Microsoft certifications, did online courses, and now they're senior developers at the age of 35. So it's all about interest, but why wait that long?
That's true. That's true. And I suppose that's why the whole idea of just getting children to be adaptable, to be adventurous, to get them to be thinking is so important, because there are so many people that haven't finished school for a range of reasons when we look at our country. And that doesn't mean that you don't have to do anything. There are so many online courses in terms of hopping on and, as you say, getting certified in a range of different things. Android, Chrome, Microsoft, Google, I mean, so many, Amazon, you name it. And there are courses out there that are certified and recognized by companies, which you can then say, I've done this, you can play in it, understand it, and use it on your CV. So I agree completely in terms of that thinking.
No, it's brilliant.
So just as we end off, do you want to talk about your innovation days?
Yes. So what we also do is, I mean, sometimes I think our team is actually touring now. They're in the Cape. And so we offer school STEAM days. We call it STEAM days. And it's a day where I know my school did something very cool. I went to African Christian school, and they called it a bananagram, or not bananagram, that's a game. Banango Traders or something like that. And it was this company that came, and I absolutely loved it. It was like they put you in groups of 4 and 8, and then you had to come up with like a business idea, and like you had like money, and you had to use it, and you had to trade, and you had to build your business up to do something. And I don't really remember what the outcome was, but I loved it. I learned so much during that day, and it got me excited about that. So we decided, with the STEAM days, I think sometimes for a school, it's so daunting. You don't know the interest levels of the kids. You don't know what to do and stuff. So STEAM day is nice. It's like a day where we come and there's a fun mission, whether you're in grade 1 to 3, 4 to 6, or 7 to 9. And obviously with COVID protocols, we need to be a bit smaller, but traditionally you could have a hall, you could have 80 students, and we give them like a task. Listen, you need to race each other at the end of the day with the car. And so we teach them, we give them a little taste of engineering, a little taste of programming, and the kids get into groups, and you see kids are actually building. Even the cool kids who are absolutely naughty are now in it, and they're giving feedback and they want to build it. They name the cars something, and then they race each other, and we give awards at the end. And we also have a little bit of like a mission kind of thing. So if you're in grade 4 to 6, you have a mission to, and you can get really creative with it, to escape Mars or to build something to survive in Mars or things like that. So our STEAM days are really nice, and a lot of schools enjoy it. A lot of the schools start off small, and then they do it with all the grades. And what that helps the school with is to see, what's the appetite, and the kids are enjoyed, which means the buy-in from the kids is big. And then you could have the STEAM day going into like a parent evening or like a parents display. So when what some of the schools have done with us in the public schools, which is really cool, is moving away from STEAM day for a second, is parents teachers evening. They call us to it, and we display all our projects, and then I give a little talk about tech, where the world is happening and what the projects are doing. And schools that did that, we literally have some schools that have 60 to 80 students as a club. That's probably the biggest sport they have in their school, because parents saw it and they don't question the school. They're like, cool, we'll pay for this, we'll do it, because there's a relevance to it. So STEAM days like this, to see students getting certificates, asking the students what they built, you get a lot of buy-in from the parents. You get excited by the teachers because they can see kids doing it and how easy it is, and you actually get excitement from students themselves.
That's so exciting. So just as an end off, what's the kind of message you'd like to leave? I'm going to take your screen away. What's the kind of message you want to leave with people tonight?
Oh, I think the theme I am over the past month or so is very not robotic-y. I would say, I think to normalize uncertainty. I think there's a lot of pressure on schools and students at a young age to just know what to do in life. I think it took me a lot later in life to realize that, and to be okay in the space where you're at, where you don't know what to do. And so a lot of students in schools ask, what do I do? What's next? What do I do? How do I get into it? And I tell them, well, if there's nothing much to do, you do the best of what's in front of you. So if that means you have a maths test coming up or a science test coming up, we'll focus on getting an A or A plus in those subjects and do that the best. And these opportunities will slowly start to come up. And so don't panic. The world moves at a crazy pace, but there's always enough time for you. So yeah, you don't need to have a plan. You can figure it out on the way.
Thank you, Rajesh. I really enjoyed speaking to you this evening and for you sharing ideas around your product. So that's been really wonderful. So thank you very much. I'm going to end the session. Good night, everybody.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Bye.